All right, I'm here with Markus Lloyd of Wood Creek Church. He is their Director of External Focus there.
That's correct.
Markus has got a few questions for you.
Sure.
Coming out of City Convene this morning.
Okay.
Number one, how do you feel like this morning's meeting has impacted you and what you're already doing?
Well, I think it's always good to be able to come to places like this where you find a lot of like-minded people. I think sometimes when you're out in the work, you think it feels very lonely at times because you think, am I the only one thinking about this? And so to be able to come to these type of meetings and not only see other church members like myself or other pastors like myself, but to see other business leaders, city leaders involved, you recognize that there's this momentum behind it. And it gives you a bit more wind beneath your wings, if you will, as you head out into doing the work that you do. Yeah.
Gotcha. How has partnering with Unite helped churches in your area come together and begin addressing the needs of your community that you work with?
Yeah, well, you always need a catalyst that's going to be about unity. Because as much as churches talk about it and want to do it, there's just so many other things that are going on that it's easy to kind of make unity kind of this back end issue, this side deal. So you always need an organization like Unite to come in and constantly be moving the churches forward and reminding you of this truth of unity of God's people. And so I think it's very helpful because churches are doing the same thing. And I think when you can get together and have these meetings where you convene and you collaborate and you cooperate, and you see places where other churches are working in the same place that you are, you can do one of those things. You can either say, well, let me learn from you how you do this better, or how can we do this together at the same time, or how can we collaborate and go after this deal? And most people are very intelligent, right? We like efficiency. And so when we see other churches working in, let's say, hunger, we go, it's kind of dumb for us to not be doing this together. We're literally working with the same food pantry just the next weekend, right? Let's bring this together. And so it's a great reminder for that.
So how important is it that the church is coming together and working in unity? Like, I mean, how important is it that that's a thing that's happening? Right?
Well, it's important, one, because when you collaborate, you're bringing together the resources in a maximizing way. It's you have, say, one church that has 20 people that are passionate about, say, hunger, and then you have another church that has 5 people that are passionate about hunger. Well, that church that has 5 people that are passionate about hunger, it's hard to get them to move in the area of hunger because they're going, well, we only have 5 people. But if you bring those 5 people, those 20, now all of a sudden you've got 25 people who are all passionate about hunger, and now you're bringing in ideas that stir each other. And so I think it's helpful because it helps maximize the intelligence and the passions of the people of God in the trajectory towards where God is sending them. But I think a second thing that it does is that it gives a better, it actually gives a better face to the gospel, right? It's a more clear understanding of the church as it's really united together. I think many times we try to kind of think about ourselves separate from each other, but we are all united whether we like it or not. Right. You know what I mean? Like, we are one body. God does not look down and go, oh, well, your church is this. Like, he sees us as one body. So it actually gives the appropriate face of the church of Christ to the community, because the community is looking at us too and going, aren't y'all all together? And then when they see us working separately, it doesn't compute to them because it's not true. We're not separate. So it gives a better face to the community. I think it supports what the Bible always says about how we work together anyway. So it's a great, it gives it solidifies the reputation of God and makes his name even more famous and great in the community when we do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If you can just look in this camera here,
Yeah.
and I want you to speak to your fellow pastors and church leaders, community activists. Just encourage them, with whatever is on your heart, to how to be involved.
Yeah. Look, being in ministry is hard work, and it can be very tempting to kind of concentrate on this flock, these people that God has put underneath you. But one of the things we have to, I would encourage you to think about it is to take out the sort of possessive pronoun in the midst of the congregation, the people you lead. And instead of saying, this is my church, this is my ministry, really find a way to open your hands up and say, this is God's ministry, right? This is God's church. These are God's people. What does God want to do with them? And how can I steward that even better? And recognize that there are plenty of people who are right down the street from you you're going to be holding hands with in heaven, and you're going to be singing holy, 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 that you can start to experience that type of heaven experience here on earth by partnering with those who are like-minded than you. And when you do that, what feels can feel very scary actually creates a sense of peace. because you find people who are like you, and you can share stories, and you can share sort of ways that you're trying to do things better, and it actually creates a better ministry experience. It reminds you, much like I said at the beginning of this interview, it reminds you that you are not alone in this mission that God has given his people to bring the gospel, to make disciples that make disciples, and to transform the cities that we are a part of. So if nothing else, be a part of it just for an ability to find some friends and some people who are in the same who are on the same track as you, and I think that's a beautiful thing that you don't want to miss out on.
So one of the other things that you do in the community, you lead up a group called Threaded, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Threaded and the work that they're doing right now.
Yeah, I love Threaded. It's actually a fun story because it kind of spawned out of a Unite group. I'm a regional champion for Plano, but then also work in the Richardson area with the region there. And once the catalytic events around race and police shootings and those things sort of happened, a group of pastors got together and we said we want to really be about this work of racial reconciliation in the church primarily, even if there are no catalytic events. And so several of us got together and we created an organization called Threaded, and we said even if there's no catalytic events, we're going to concentrate on this. And so the mission of our organization is to inspire relationships, reconciliation, and collaborative action among the diverse body of Christ. What we recognize is that we serve a God who is a reconciling God. He has given us the model for reconciliation. That's 2 Corinthians 5:18. All this through Christ, God reconciled the world to himself and then gave us the ministry of reconciliation. So when we talk about reconciliation, if you don't put Christ in the middle of that conversation, you don't really have an appropriate model for reconciliation. The world doesn't understand it. And so we want to utilize that reconciliation, reconcile the church, because we have put up walls that Jesus tore down, thousands of years ago. And so we want to remind the church of its ability to reconcile, and then remind the church of its mission to be ambassadors of reconciliation. And so that's part of where we are and the things we're working toward. And we do that through small groups, through resources that we give leaders. We really try to get leaders on board so they can understand and take it back to the networks they lead, and then start to implement these tools and these practices into their church bodies, their ministry bodies, and we can see this sort of multiplication of this thought process of relationships, reconciliation, and collaborative action among the body of Christ there.
So if I'm just a layperson who's watching this, I'm not necessarily a leader in a church, I'm just your regular attender, or maybe I'm not even in church. What is like a good first step for me to begin to walk out in this direction of racial reconciliation? I know it's necessary.
Right.
I know it's needed. I don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Yeah, it's good. Well, you can always go. You can always go to wearethreaded.org. That's the website for us, and we have a resource page. And I like to tell people a couple of things. One is recognize that this conversation has been going on a long time, and so there are resources out there where people are already having this discussion and giving you at least some starter points. Because a lot of people like to go. They go, "Hey, I understand this, and I'm just going to jump in and try it." It's like there's some ways that you can do it to be helpful, and there's some ways that you can do it to bring harm. So I would go to the resource page and I would start by reading some other material that's along line of this. Another thing I would do is, we work with an organization called Be the Bridge. Be the Bridge is a great reconciliation organization. It's just started recently, but it's more of a small group kind of lay person opportunity where they have curriculum and have lay people kind of sitting together talking about this issue. And so they've got curriculum. You can download it for free. It's really easy to do. And I would start a group where you bring together some multi-ethnic friends that you have and say, hey, let's just start talking about this. But recognize that doing this conversation, the gospel has to be the center, because when you take the gospel out, you really don't have a reason to do it. So of those two things, I would start researching. History is such a great tool and help when you get into this world of reconciliation. And then I would start by just reaching out to those who are close to you and saying, hey, let's have discussions about it. Let's just put it out there and see what we can create in our own relationships that we have to further this conversation and get to maybe a better understanding of each other as we seek this issue and go after this issue of racial reconciliation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Markus, Lloyd, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so